Welcome to Smoky Mountain Echo, Haywood County, North Carolina government's podcast. It's been a little bit since we've been able to do a show because we've been dealing with the effects of Helene here in Haywood County and North Carolina. Western North Carolina. And while the storm itself has passed, the lessons we've learned remain valuable for everyone, no matter where you are or what type of disaster you might face. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the importance of emergency preparedness, the role that local government and first responders play, and how we can all contribute to recovery efforts after a major storm. Whether you're someone who has faced a natural disaster or just wants to be ready for one in the future, this conversation will have practical tips and insights to help you stay informed and prepared. We're going to be talking to Allison Richmond. She is the Public Information Officer for Haywood County Emergency Management. Allison, let's start with some of the basics. Why is emergency preparedness so important for local communities, and what are some of the steps that we can take before a disaster hits?
So at the simplest level, emergency preparedness saves lives. Taking basic steps can help us be prepared, to feel more confident to face any kind of disaster, and to keep our families safe when the moment arrives. So some of the most basic things you can do are to sign up for Haywood Alerts. That helps you receive information that we send out in the middle of an emergency and before an emergency to let you know what's happening. Another simple thing you can do is to create for your own family an emergency kit that meets your needs for the first 72 hours of an emergency. So that means food, water, basic supplies, medicines, even bandages, just simple things that you know are going to help your family stay safe and comfortable during those first 72 hours after something happens. And that could be a winter storm, a rain or a flood event, or a landslide, any other kind of incident that we might see in Haywood County.
Yeah, and here in Haywood County, we started preparing and messaging for Helene, up to a week before. What are some common misconceptions that people might have about being prepared for a national disaster, much like a hurricane that we experienced with Helene?
A lot of times people think that because we are so far inland, tropical storms don't affect us. But if you've lived in Haywood County in the last 5 years, you've witnessed 2 of them. So we know that tropical storms and flood events do impact us, and they can be severe and they can be life-threatening. So don't discount what dangers and hazards can impact the county. On readyhaywood.com, we have a really good page that lists a lot of the common hazards and simple ways that you can prepare for them.
During Helene here in Haywood, we experienced a range of challenges from flooding, power outages, to service disruptions throughout the county. What are some things that we can learn from this experience that we can take with us for future emergencies here in Haywood County? And not just in Haywood County, but across the state and the country.
I want every family to consider what would happen to them in the event that we lose communications like that again. What were your biggest challenges? What were the things that helped you stay connected? Something that we did was we used radio to stay connected. So I want every household in Haywood County to prepare by purchasing or acquiring somehow one of those basic hand crank or solar powered radios. Something that you can run without batteries, that you can turn on and listen to. That's part of our communications plan, is to broadcast across the radio when emergencies happen. We will do that in good times and in bad. So listen to the radio, pay attention, especially in an emergency, and have one of those handy so you're ready.
As we've seen with this storm and with Fred 3 years ago, clear and effective communication is definitely crucial during emergencies like this. What role does public information and the media play in keeping folks safe during these disasters? As we've said, we went several days in Haywood County during Helene where we didn't really have any communication at all, and we had to rely on radios.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and our job as public information officers is to communicate what is happening, what we know, and what we want the public to be aware of to be safer. So some of that comes down to sharing where things like shelters are located, where resources are located, and some of it comes down, unfortunately, to dealing with misinformation. During this storm, we had a lot of that. So one of the ways that we accomplish our public information goal is to team up and work together. So there are 3 PIOs in the county right now that worked on this last storm. And what we do is we team up and we share information and we seek out the best sources of verified information, official sources, and we share those across all of our available platforms. So we speak with one consistent message about what's happening, where you can find information, and where you can find resources. And that's important because our job is to bring you only verified official information. And that way, no matter what source you're looking at, as long as it's an official county source, like county government page, emergency services pages, or the sheriff's office pages, you're getting the same information because it's all coming from one source, that joint information center that we form whenever there's an emergency.
How can residents stay engaged in disaster preparedness efforts as we, continue in the recovery aspect and we keep moving, in the months ahead? How do we keep disaster preparedness at the forefront of people's minds?
I think you'll see a lot of the community centers are starting to host events around emergency preparedness. We'll be speaking at some of those events. There will also be long-term recovery groups forming that will help us move forward. Those are formed by volunteer agencies and churches. Some of that work is already ongoing. So Haywood County has many awesome community centers who work in their local communities to help people prepare and stay prepared and even recover from events like this. So they're the ones that step up and provide feeding, they provide resources and food, and sometimes just community, just a place to be together. So I encourage everyone to get involved in some of these recovery efforts as they come about, and we'll try to share that information when there's opportunities for people to volunteer. If you feel like you have skills and an interest in long-term recovery, there will be opportunities in the coming months, and we'll get that message out as quickly as we can.
After a natural disaster, recovery can be a long and difficult process. What are some key strategies for communities to rebuild stronger and more resilient after a storm like this?
As we've seen in this event, I think the first thing you can do is to look for and understand who the trusted sources of information are. The official information you'll get will be coming from county government sources and from local community-led organizations. Another thing you can do is work together with your neighbors. I always encourage people, before a major event, check on your neighbors. Ask them how they're doing. Are they ready? Do they know what their emergency evacuation plan is? Where are they going? And think about this for your own family as well. If your road is one where it gets washed out when there's a flood, or if you don't know a couple different ways to leave your neighborhood in an emergency, think about that now when we're not busy worrying about a disaster. In those blue sky days, that's what we call those when we're not having a disaster or a major event. In those off times, think about how you can be ready next time. What things went well for you? What didn't go well? Do you have a plan if you need to evacuate? It might even just be that there's a threat of a fire somewhere and you need to leave for a couple hours while firefighters do their job. Or there's an event happening in your community and you can't get home. If those things, sometimes those minor emergencies can impact us just as much as major ones. We need to be prepared for any event where we can't be where we would like to be. We can't be home, we can't get to our loved ones. Lots of different ways that we could be impacted by an emergency. Another thing I'd like everyone to consider is everyone in your household who has a phone needs to be registered for Haywood Alerts. That includes children and teenagers. When an emergency happens, how will you plan to reunite? Where will you meet? Think through those questions now and use some of the guides on Ready Haywood to help you through those and plan ahead so you're that much more prepared and ready to take care of yourself in the event of an emergency until help can arrive. So on readyhaywood.com, you will find links to emergency information, links to register for Haywood Alerts. You will find sample list for emergency kits for different times of year, different emergencies. You will find guides for how to help children and seniors through emergencies. You will find information on hazards that impact Haywood County. Everything on readyhaywood.com is Haywood specific. It's all been designed and crafted to help Haywood County residents be more resilient and prepared in the face of almost any kind of emergency.
That was Allison Richmond with Haywood County Emergency Management. Don't forget, as we've mentioned in this conversation, you can stay up to date on emergency preparedness information at readyhaywood.com.